Congressman LaCharette, thanks for joining us this week.
Good to see you.
So we've got a lot of stuff to cover, so let's jump right into it. This is a busy time here in D.C. The first thing I want to talk about is the budget. You know, there's been a lot of talk about the budget over the last year or so. Things are finally starting to heat up in the House and the Senate. Talk to us about what's going on.
Well, both the House and the Senate are prepared to mark up. That means take the bill to their committee on the budget and amend it or not amendment, get it ready for floor activity. It's one of the earliest times that I can remember. The President sent up his budget one of the earliest times I can remember as well. And there's a lot of anticipation on Capitol Hill. You have new budget chairs in both the House and the Senate, Senator Enzi in the Senate and Congressman Tom Price from Georgia on the House side. And each, I think, is going to be looking forward to making their mark. I mean, so Price wants to separate himself from the Ryan budgets, if you will, and create his own document. The early indications are, and just in talking to people on the Appropriations Committee, nobody's going to like the budget because it's going to continue to, not only keep in place sequestration, but reduce accounts to reach a goal. Everybody likes the fact that we're spending less money, but there's going to be a lot of groups that are dependent upon a certain level of funding that are going to be disappointed. Now, the key thing to remember is that the budget is a blueprint. And unless it includes really specific reconciliation instructions, which the Senate is talking about doing, by the way, then the committees just get a number, and then they're free to move the money between accounts as long as they hew to the top line number. It's called the 302A. And so it's going to be a big week. And here at McDonald Hopkins Government Strategies, we're going to get you the information as soon as we have it on both the House and the Senate budget.
You mentioned reconciliation, and it's an incredibly hot topic. And what I think is so interesting is how many people have different ideas about exactly how to use reconciliation. Some people say let's use it for comprehensive tax reform, even though Orrin Hatch said absolutely not. Some people are saying let's use it for Obamacare. Some people are saying hardcore conservatives say let's use it to deal with executive actions on immigration. First off, explain to people what reconciliation is for those who are out there who don't know what reconciliation. And secondly, kind of reading the tea leaves, where do you think that it's most likely we're going to see reconciliation used?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, the Senate is talking about reconciliation. The House hasn't brought it up yet, although it's certainly an active conversation that's going on over there. And reconciliation basically is when you have two versions of the budget produced within the House and Senate, there's going to be differences. And in order to resolve not only those differences but other things, the Budget Committee gives specific instructions to the other committees as to how they're to deal with the problem. And so, for instance, and you can use it for three purposes. You can use it for tax reform, as you mentioned. You can use it for spending. Or you can use it to sort of amend executive orders. And the current winners, I think, are the people that want to defund Obamacare, to be honest with you. But so it's to be determined, and so there would be instructions in there that to not fund certain accounts. You do whatever you want, but you can't fund these accounts that are responsible for the funding of Obamacare. And the appropriators hate it. A lot of people hate it, but it's one of those things where, since now the Republicans have taken the majority, you do have a rather vocal minority of the majority in both houses that think this is a good idea.
And reconciliation gets you past having to get the 60 votes in the Senate, just a simple majority, which would allow Republicans to actually pick an issue and get something to the president's desk, even if it's something he's going to veto.
And that has a lot of appeal, because obviously getting to the 60-vote threshold has been a problem. We just saw it in the Keystone Pipeline. Well, we actually succeeded there, but we didn't succeed in overriding the veto. So, yeah, it's not easy.
Another issue that I feel like we talk about in D.C. every year, mostly because we do, is the doc fix.
Right.
For folks who are out there who don't know what the doc fix is, talk to us a little bit about what it is and what, if anything, is actually being done to permanently fix this.
Well, in the 1997 Balanced Budget Act, there's something called SGR, which is Sustainable Growth Rate. It's a fancy name for how much Medicare pays your doctor for Medicare services or your hospital. For services that they render to you. Every year, because again that document was attempting to achieve a balanced budget, there's some phony numbers in there, and those phony numbers are based upon, for instance, last year, I think a 27% cut to doctors. And so that made the books balance in 1997, but who's going to cut doctors' names, 27%. So we deal with this every year, and rather than dealing with it, it's always you put a Band-Aid on it, and you find a way to fix it for a year. The Senate started talking about a one-year fix, but now you actually have pretty active negotiations in the House of Representatives on fixing it permanently. It's expensive. It's $174 billion. It's going to have to be located somewhere over the next 10 years. But it also, I think, pays for itself in the certainty that it brings. We don't have this frenetic where we're using short-term money for a long-term problem. And so the news this week is Ron Wyden, the senator from Oregon, who was the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, issued a statement saying that he thinks the House is really, really close. And as early as next week, we could see their proposal. And again, is it going to be a tough vote? Is it going to be a tough, thing to get through and to the president? Yeah, but I'll tell you, it's a long time in coming.
A couple of issues I wanted to hit on real quickly before we close. The first one is I'd be remiss to not mention the Hillary Clinton emails because I feel like everyone in the world is talking about the Hillary Clinton emails. Do you think these are a big deal or not?
Well, personally, I think they're a big deal, and I think they're a big deal because when she was Senator Clinton, she issued a couple statements blasting Bush administration officials for using private email accounts. And quite frankly, at the time that she was, sort of becoming the Secretary of State, they were still after a couple people within the Bush administration for this conduct. And I don't think that I did this for my convenience statement at the press conference is going to work very well. But I think it has the ability to be a problem, and the problem is this, to be as nonpartisan as I can about this. So the way it's supposed to work is you're supposed to have a government email account where you conduct official business, and then that official business is automatically archived. And when you leave office, you have the chance to sit down with someone in the department to go over, okay, this is good, this is not good, so on and so on. But there's sort of a third-party moderator on what gets deleted and what doesn't. It's been 2 years since she's been the Secretary of State, and she's had possession of these emails apparently on a server up in Chappaqua, New York, and she's acknowledged deleting 30,000 of them. Now, maybe that's fine, and maybe all of them should have been deleted, but there's no way to know except for trust me. And I don't know that the people in the media in particular are going to let her get away with it. But having said that, in today's paper, it's kind of interesting. The Republicans are all hot on the trail, and they want to get the server, brought down from New York and all this other business and get the emails. The Democrats, some of the Democrats are saying, it's closed, case closed. She said what was on her mind, it's closed.
Well, and do you think that, it seems like that there's this cycle with Hillary Clinton and, frankly, with Bill Clinton. There's this cycle. Something happens, it looks really bad for the Clintons. They do nothing, they kind of wait for a Republican overreach, which happens, and by the time it's all over, this big political loser for them has somehow become a political winner by virtue of Republican overreach. Do you think that's what the Clinton team is banking on again, is Republicans are going to overreach, and at some point the tide is going to turn, and it's going to be in their favor? Yeah,
the worst thing that could happen if you're a Republican is that they would overreach, and Senator Clinton, Secretary Clinton, becomes a victim somehow of Republican nastiness. I mean, this is one of those things. I would hope that the party learned in impeachment, which I think is what you're talking about. That originally, in the impeachment process, the public was not with President Clinton. By the time we were done with him, he was considered to be so picked on that his approval ratings were some of the highest when he left office. And I would hope that Republicans learned that lesson, but I know my colleagues, and I'll bet some of them have, and some of them haven't.
Right. Well, another issue we've talked about before, kind of wanted to revisit, the Aaron Schock situation. It's another one that doesn't seem to be going away. Kind of, what do you think is the latest? I saw this morning there was a piece in the National Review and a piece from Red State saying Aaron Schock should resign. It's not surprising that suddenly conservatives think that Aaron Schock should resign because
he's
really
not a conservative.
Right. How problematic is this going forward?
Well, we talked about this last week on our little broadcast with Mike Pasco of our firm, and welcome back, by the way. I told everybody you were on the mend, and you are, and here you are. And Mike's sort of take was that Aaron in that district up in Peoria gets reelected at the rate of about 75%. So it's really going to, while the media and inside the Beltway stuff is stirring pretty good, that the stuff in suburban Chicago hasn't reached that point yet. And it really is one of the questions, but you got to go when your constituents don't want you anymore. And I don't think he's there yet. The only hiccup that's going to potentially occur, he was quoted in the paper the other day, and you really don't want to say this just for you non-lawyers out there, but when it was brought up that he'd taken 10 of his staffers on a trip to New York City and paid for it with government money, his comment was, "I hope I didn't break the law."
I knew you were going to say that.
Well, I hope I didn't break the law. Well, you know what? I hope so too, but
Right.
don't say that.
Right. I mean, those are kind of words to live by in general. Like,
Well,
I hope throughout the day I don't break the law, but...
Well, but you sort of counterampose that with, Senator Menendez of New Jersey, who rumors are that there's an upcoming indictment. And he's not saying, "I hope I didn't break the law." He's
Right.
saying, "I didn't do anything."
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, word to all you who may be under suspicion, go with B.
Right. Finally, last piece,
Yeah.
the confirmation of the new Attorney General, Loretta Lynch. It's actually been a little more contentious than
Yes.
I think people thought it was going to be.
Yes.
Initially, she kind of came out of this in the beginning with some bipartisan support, and things have deteriorated greatly.
Right.
I assume she's going to get confirmed. How ugly is it going to end up being in the end?
Well, I think she will. And the news this week is Senator McConnell thinks it's going to happen next week, that they're going to put her confirmation on the floor. She'll get enough votes to be confirmed. I mean, really, at the end of the day, the president, unless the person is nuts, should have who the president wants to be the Attorney General. And she'll be confirmed. But you're right. The Republican sort of saying, "Yeah, this is fine with us too. We got some problems," has really ramped up a little bit. So I expect it to be sort of a contentious debate. But when all time is expired and it's time to cast the votes, she'll be the next Attorney General of the United States.
All right. Well, I look forward to once again talking to you next week.
We'll see you then.
Thanks, Congressman.